Where are you leaking power, my friend? That's what I want to talk about because we are about to go into a Pluto retrograde. For the last few weeks, we've had no planets retrograde, which has been nice to have all this forward momentum. Um, a lot of people have stress around retrogrades. They feel like it makes things more difficult, more challenging. But I prefer to look forward to retrogrades because they're happening a good deal of the year, honestly, about half the year on average. And so I figure we might as well work with what we're given here. And I like retrogrades because they're an opportunity to review and tweak. And so I feel in particular with Pluto, it's about looking at where we have our power, where we're leaking power, or where we need to spread our power in a more compassionate way, or embody it, so to speak. And this one in particular, we're coming off the Great Aries Stellium, which happened in April. Maybe you've heard several astrologers talk about that. That's when you have three or more planets in the same sign. And so for the last half of April, for the most part, we had, signs in the sun, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, and Chiron. That was a lot of Aries energy, but, that's winding down now. And I feel like that got kicked up because it was really about looking at where we experience our anger. How do we have a healthy relationship with anger, expressing ourselves? Because when you can integrate your anger, that can be a great impetus or a way to tap into your innate power. And Pluto is all about power and transformation. It represents the death rebirth cycle, or often when you have like a seed in the ground under pressure, developing in that pressure. And I have a friend who studies herbs and plants, and she was teaching me that plants grow in both directions, in the roots and up. Like they respond to what's happening underneath the ground, in the soil, in the dark, what they're getting from the nutrients. But they also respond, of course, to above ground, how they're interacting with the sun and the air. And I feel like that's what we're doing as well. Like that's kind of a great analogy for our spiritual journey. Like we have what's going on internally, what we're analyzing, what we're becoming aware of, what we're feeling, what we're processing. And then we're also reacting to what's happening around us outside in our world, how we're interacting with people in our world, maybe our clients or our friends or our family. Like both are communicating with each other in the same way that what happens below the ground communicates to the plant or the seed, and what happens above the ground communicates to the plant or the seed. And I feel like that is a great analogy for any Pluto transit or a Pluto retrograde in particular. And I also want to share with you some thoughts I had about Pluto based on a presentation I did on Pluto a while back. Pluto, it really represents deep transformation, our shadow work, resilience, trauma, how we respond to trauma. When life breaks us down, how do we rebuild ourselves? How do we renew ourselves? The astrologer Christopher Renstrom, he says that Pluto can also represent our tenacity for life, the part of us that clings to life and survival, no matter how daunting the circumstances. And I'm looking down at my notes, so if you see me do that, that's what's going on there. And Pluto transits can be difficult. Pluto retrogrades can be difficult too, especially if you have a challenge with expressing your power, standing up for yourself, showing up for yourself. Pluto invites us to do that. Pluto will also break down what is not sustainable. And it's usually when you're not expecting it. So, sometimes it could be a literal death in your life of a loved one, or it could be a divorce, or, losing your house. Major big life transformations like that can often happen during Pluto transits. And so sometimes these themes get revisited during a Pluto retrograde. So it can be intense, but when you move through it, you're always better you're usually stronger when you come out on the other side. Often, when you go through these big life transformations or transitions, once you move through it, even if it was difficult, you usually became a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. And I wanted to actually get a little bit technical and talk about Pluto's actual orbit, because I think it's a great analogy for what you go through during a Pluto retrograde or even a Pluto transit. Pluto's elliptical excuse me, moves it closer to the sun, thawing its surface ice or melting the surface ice. So that then forms a thin atmosphere of mostly nitrogen that escapes the planet. When Pluto travels away from the sun, its atmosphere then freezes back to a solid state. And I feel like that thawing, becoming almost gas, and then freezing back into a solid state. I feel like that's the perfect analogy of what it feels like to grieve a major loss. So, say you lose a house or a marriage or a loved one, or even like a career that you were like really into that you loved. Like when you experience grief or a loss at that level, it breaks you down in a whole new way that very few other life experiences can. But then when you come back into a solid state, when you build yourself back up from that loss, you are fundamentally changed. You have been put back together, reconstituted, so to speak, in a whole different way. And this Pluto retrograde, it may have that kind of intensity, but know that that's what's on the other side of it if that is what unfolds for you. Is that it's reconstituting you, it's rebuilding you, it's growing you into a stronger version of yourself. Or to go back to the plant analogy, you're becoming a stronger plant, or maybe you're becoming a stronger tree in the process. Um, my feeling about Pluto is that it demands that we ask ourselves, where do I need to thaw out? And where do I need to solidify? So look at those questions over these next 5 months or so, because Pluto is going to be retrograde until October 15th. So that's about 5 months or so to really sit with those kind of questions, that kind of issue. And also, in particular, since at the beginning of it, we're going to have Mother's Day in May and then Father's Day in June. And I thought maybe the universe is asking us to look at our relationships with the people who raised us, our parental figures. Um, where do you need to show up in power in those relationships with your parents? Where do you need to reparent or interparent yourself? And if you have children, what kind of parent are you becoming? Where are you at on that journey? What does it look like for you? And how are you expressing your power in a way that feels authentic and true and compassionate as a leader, as a role model for your child or your children? I feel like this retrograde is a great time to sit with and move through those types of questions, those types of issues. That was basically what I want to come in and share with you, and really use this time to ground yourself as we go through more transformations. Just wanted to invite you to really sit with that, reflect on that. I think Pluto retrogrades are great times to look at what's closing out in your life. What part of the death, rebirth, death cycle are you in with any major transition in your life, with maybe a career or a relationship or a job or where you live, or relationships that you have, whether they're friendships or romantic. What is dying or what's being reborn, what's being rebirthed in a new way. These are the things to look at and move through during a Pluto retrograde. And be compassionate with yourself, be kind to yourself. This is not about doing these explorations from a space of shame or guilt. Do it from self compassion and self love, self acceptance. that it's all about learning and growing, being willing to see how far you've come and just where you are, honestly, and where you'd like to move to next. I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning of this. I'm Darice, Moon Life Illuminated. I am an astrologer. I like to think of myself as an astral counselor, where I use the transits to help people move through these things emotionally, help them calm down so that they can be a more true, full version of themselves. I do have my school community, which is $9 a month or $50 a year. I also have a one-to-one 30-minute session called Witnessing You, where I can help you see more of yourself, what's keeping you from living from your zone of genius. I have That's a snapshot of my longer 90-minute session, You Illuminate It. And just wanted to offer that to you. Make sure that you're getting support, whether it's from me or other people. If you're working with other therapists, healers, shadow work, doing that sort of thing, and continue to, do all the other self-nurturing things, staying hydrated, eating healthy, exercising, meditating, really being true to who you are. Help you, all of those things help you stay in your body and be more grounded. So, with that, I just want to remind you to always remember the light within you, and I will see you soon.